Nobody has been talking about Japan. And in football, that kind of silence is the most dangerous sign of all. While debates rage on about the usual powerhouses, something extraordinary has been quietly taking shape in the Far East, built brick by brick, over years, away from the spotlight. Now, with the 2026 World Cup just weeks away, the nations that ignore Japan are starting to look over their shoulders. Because what is happening inside the Samurai Blue camp, right, now does not feel like a normal footballing story. It feels like the beginning of something the world will remember for a very long time. To understand where Japan is headed in 2026, you first have to go back to 1 October, night in 1993, a night that broke an entire nation's heart and quietly forged the man who would one day try to mend it. Hajime Moriyasu was 25 years old, playing in the middle of a pitch in Doha, with his country just 90 seconds away from its very first World Cup. Then Iraq equalized in stoppage time, and just like that, the dream was gone. Moriyasu would later say he has almost no memory of what happened after the final whistle. Not the dressing room, not the journey back to the hotel, nothing. He said the World Cup had been right there in front of him, close enough to touch, and then it simply disappeared. That evening in Doha left a scar that stayed with him for over 30 years, shaping every coaching decision, every team talk, and every tactical choice he would ever make. Fast forward to March of 2025, Moriyasu is now 56 years old, sitting calmly in a dugout in Saitama as his Japan side beat Bahrain 2-0 in front of their home supporters. With that result, Japan became the very first nation outside of the host countries to book their place at the 2020 World Cup. Getting there before England, before Argentina, before everyone, the young midfielder who lost his dream in stoppage time had just delivered the World Cup to an entire country before the rest of the world had even started packing its bags. You could not write a comeback story like this. It is simply too good. The way Japan arrived at that moment was not lucky, it was dominant. Across the entire qualifying campaign, they scored 20 goals and conceded just 2, a level of control that very few international sides achieve in a pressure-filled qualification process. Their 7-0 destruction of China was so complete and so humiliating that Chinese state media called it a day of humiliation in their own official newspapers. One former Chinese international, visibly shaken, told cameras afterward that he had wanted to jump in the river after watching that game. That is what Moriyasu's Japan is doing to opponents right now. But to truly grasp why this version of Japan hits harder than any that came before it, you have to look at who is actually wearing the shirt. Here is a number that will genuinely stop you in your tracks. When Japan qualified for their very first World Cup back in 1998, every single player in the squad played their club football in the J-League at home in Japan. Every one of them, without a single exception. Today, there are roughly 114 Japanese players spread across European club football, from the Premier League to La Liga to the Bundesliga, which represents a 90% increase in just 5 years alone. According to Nikkei Asia, the entire likely starting 11 for 2026 plays in a top European league every single weekend. Look at the players and the picture gets even more remarkable. Wataru Endo, the captain, just won the Premier League title with Liverpool in the 2024-25 season under Arne Slot. Jurgen Klopp once called him a late bloomer, who is a monster on the pitch and lives to fight for every ball. That is the man wearing the armband for Japan at a World Cup. Then there is Kaoru Mitoma at Brighton, and his story alone deserves its own documentary. At 18, Mitoma turned down a professional football contract so he could go to university instead. His thesis? A scientific study of dribbling, which involved strapping a GoPro camera to his own head to analyze eye movement patterns frame by frame. The man literally studied his way to the Premier League, and his thesis still sits in pride of place at the University of Tsukuba today. Takefusa Kubo is at Real Sociedad in Spain. Aichi Kamada at Crystal Palace won the FA Cup in 2025 against Manchester City, and his manager Oliver Glasner once said he had rarely seen a football brain quite like his in all his years in the game. And leading the line, Ayase Ueda at Feyenoord was the top scorer in the entire Dutch league last season, 25 goals in 29 matches, with Premier League clubs already circling. This is not just a national team any longer. This is a hand-picked European all-star squad, assembled from the very best football academies and stadiums on the continent. European quality players, though, do not win World Cups on their own. What separates truly great national teams from talented ones is the mind in the dugout, and Hajime Moriyasu is operating at a level that the football world is only just beginning to fully appreciate. He is the only person inside the entire Japanese setup who was actually on the pitch during the heartbreak of 1993. He experienced that loss not as a fan watching at home, but as a player who reached out for a World Cup and had it snatched away. That experience became the fuel for everything that followed. After going into management, Moriyasu took over Sanfrecce Hiroshima in 2012 and won 3 J-League titles in just 4 seasons. The kind of record that tells you this is a man who knows how to build winning teams from scratch under sustained pressure. But it was the 2022 World Cup in Qatar that announced Moriyasu to the rest of the world as something genuinely special. Japan were losing 1-0 to Germany in the second half. The game was slipping away. Moriyasu made 2 substitutions, Ritsu Doan and Takuma Asano, off the bench and completely changed the match. Doan equalized in the 75th minute. Asano scored a stunning finish in the 83rd to win it. A few days later, the same story unfolded against Spain. Japan were 1-0 down at halftime. Moriyasu reorganized everything from the touchline, and 2 second-half goals overturned the deficit completely. The famous Tanaka goal that sealed it, confirmed by VAR, after the longest review in World Cup history, with Mitoma keeping the ball in play by less than 2 millimeters, knocked Germany out of the tournament entirely. Spain coach Luis Enrique said afterwards that he was not happy with how the game ended, even though his own side advanced. Japan won that match against Spain with just 18% of the ball, the lowest possession figure recorded by any winning side in the modern era of the World Cup. That is not luck. That is a tactical masterclass from a man who spent 3 decades waiting for this stage. The stadium, the home of football. 80,000 fans expecting England to cruise to a comfortable victory. No Asian nation had ever beaten England on home soil in 10 previous attempts. The record had stood for as long as anyone could remember. Then, in the 23rd minute, Mitoma stole the ball from Cole Palmer in midfield. Keito Nakamura drove into space ahead of him, and Mitoma slipped the return pass beyond Pickford to put Japan in front. The stadium fell silent, and Japan held on, 1-0, full-time. England managed just 3 shots on target across the entire 90 minutes. Zion Suzuki, the 23-year-old Japanese goalkeeper who was born in Newark, New Jersey, was immovable behind the backline. Japan had become the first Asian nation in the entire history of the sport to beat England at Wembley. Moriyasu said afterwards that the result would give his squad the belief they needed to go to the World Cup and truly make their mark. Since that night, Japan are unbeaten in 7 consecutive matches against European opposition, 6 wins and 1 draw, having beaten Germany, Turkey, Scotland, England, and Brazil within a 2-year stretch. Japan landed in Group F at the 2026 World Cup alongside the Netherlands, Tunisia, and Sweden, and they wasted absolutely no time making a statement. Against the Dutch, the biggest challenge on paper, Japan refused to lie down. Van Dijk headed the Netherlands in front, but Keito Nakamura leveled. Somerville looked to have won it for the Dutch. Then in the 89th minute, Daichi Kamada headed in a dramatic. Tunisia still await, a side that will sit deep and make themselves as difficult as possible, which has historically been Japan's biggest tactical headache. And Sweden present a completely different physical threat with Victor Gyökeres and Alexander Isak, forming one of the most dangerous striking partnerships in the entire tournament. But here is the part of this story that weighs heaviest on every Japanese football supporter. The curse. Japan have reached the round of 16, 4 separate times, in 2002, 2010, 2018, and 2022, and each time, the journey ended right there. 4 times, 4 exits at exactly the same stage. In 2018, they led Belgium 2-0 with 23 minutes remaining and somehow lost 3-2 to a stoppage time goal. In 2022, they fell on penalties to Croatia. The round of 16 has been an invisible wall, a ceiling they have touched every single time but never broken through. This time feels genuinely different, though. The tournament expanded to 48 teams. There is an extra knockout round, and the squad Japan are bringing is simply the most talented group of footballers this country has ever produced. Not close to it, just the best by a distance. Even Zico, the Brazilian legend who once managed Japan himself, said publicly in May 2026 that he genuinely believes the Samurai Blue will reach the quarterfinals. When Japan walk out for their next game, the football world would do well to pay full attention. This is not the Japan of 1998, showing up grateful just to be at the party. This is the most complete, most experienced, most talented Japanese national team in the entire history of the sport. Not close to it, just the best, by a distance. Behind them stands a coach who has been carrying the wound of a single stoppage time goal for over 30 years. A man who built this squad with patience, precision, and an unshakable belief that the moment he missed as a player belongs to him as a manager. And yesterday against the Netherlands, twice behind, twice they fought back. Kamada in the 89th minute. That is not luck. That is who Japan are now. The silence you have been hearing from Japan was never emptiness. It was preparation. The storm is here. So, do you believe Japan are hiding something truly special for 2026? Or is the world still not taking them seriously enough? But this World Cup is only just getting started.